With the opportunity to test drive so many vehicles throughout the year, I'm often approached, hey, have you tested this one? What do you think about that one? And always, of the top 5 choices, this one is among it. Hey, welcome to this edition of Road Warrior. I'm your host, Grant Roberson. Now, you think I'd be asked about convertibles, neck-snapping fun, 2-door coupes, or just fast cars. Not the case. Instead, it's about the reliable, everyday family vehicles and getting the job done. This one being among the top 5. Specifically, this being the 2023 Hyundai Palisade Calligraphy Edition. And what that means is a lot of bells and whistles, comfort, and even better, room enough for 3 rows. For 2023, there's some modest changes for Hyundai's flagship sport utility vehicle, both on the outside and on the inside. Now, this vehicle handles 8 passengers overall, but for the Calligraphy Edition, with its upscale caption chairs in the second row, you're losing 1 occupant, not a big deal. As for changes on the outside, you're going to see it mostly with the front and rear bumper fascia, the front grille and headlight and daytime running light assemblies, and at the 4 corners with a new multi-spoke alloy wheel, and lastly, auto-dimming outside mirrors. When it comes to sport utility vehicles that offer 3 rows of comfort, they're not really all created equal. Some are massive mammoths on the open road, and others compromise legroom just to welcome a 3rd row of seating. So therefore, I have to kind of remind myself of baselines and where we're headed. Now, the midsize segment typically starts about in the 185-inch range. That typically is just going to have 2 rows of comfort. As you start to creep over 190 inches, that's where that 3rd row is going to come into play, and certainly over 200 inches, you're going to expect 3 rows of comfort. Thankfully, this vehicle goes into the upper sizing of the midsize segment, maybe falling just shy of the starter kit for full size. Overall, what you're going to see here is around about 197 inches long, wheelbase fairly stretched at 114 inches, width pretty stout at about 79 inches wide. As for height, 69 inches tall. Lastly is ground clearance, because with any vehicle that gives you a little bit of extra height comes commanding views as well as great ground clearance, in this case just shy of 8 inches. When it comes to the color palette on this particular Palisade, you could say it's like a fine wine of Merlot waiting to be uncorked, this being referred to as Sierra Burgundy, nice deep reddish tone. As for the contrast you're seeing, that's more in a brushed silver look, both on the roof rails, around the windows, on the door handles, and entirely around the lower third. Really what's drawing everyone's attention, of course, is the grille warfare. Pretty much massive amount of silver appointments at the front, only a hint of body color that sweeps around the headlight assembly. Otherwise, you're getting kind of that dual darkened silver tone through the middle. As for the headlights, you'll see it in a nice vertical stack that's been changed out for 2023, as well as this daytime running light that gives a vertical cascade, really pushing the eyes to the middle. Looking at the dual tones around this vehicle, certainly it all culminates here at the back end, with the front and the back having some mirror qualities. First off, with that silver wrapping around to this lower fascia, even right down to the dual exhaust. Now, I mentioned earlier how there's no real blinged out chrome. That's kind of a lie, because you'll see it in the form of the Hyundai emblem and the wording Palisade. Wouldn't hurt if that was maybe a little more subdued to match the appointments, but I get the fact they want this to stand out. Otherwise, you're going to see body color filling in the rest of the gaps. As for the taillight assembly, you'll see a little bit of mirroring to the front with the vertical stacking here. This being, again, a silver appointment to add some little extra curving and some pizzazz. Now, before we climb inside, let's look a little bit deeper at the rear taillight assembly. First thing you'll notice is the all-time running light down the side, really giving that illumination at night. As for braking, dual brake lights up top, turn signal hazard lights, you'll see this down below, and you'll see some correlation there on the outside mirrors. For reverse lights, that's in the form of these 2 lights here as well. One thing I really wish would happen is a little bit more operation when it comes to turn signals. One thing I've noticed on some other vehicles is that the turn signal is actually being separated way down low on the rear bumper. That just doesn't seem to work for me. I like what we got going on here, but why not turn this actual whole rear taillight into some indicator? That way everyone behind you clearly knows what you're doing. I'm not saying this isn't going to work, but if you have the opportunity, make it much larger and much safer. Also creating with safety is what's going on back here with the Palisade, both in the form of the backup sensors and backup cameras. This vehicle has surround view, pretty much means there's no blind spot, and the likelihood of you actually counting on only this to see out the back just isn't the case. Instead, you're having multitude of cameras to make sure everything is clear and scratch and ding free. The big story with any vehicle that delivers 3 rows of comfort is just the capability. It's not just people, but the combination of people with cargo and the multitude of options when it comes to getting the job done. And where it begins is here at the back end and just the ease or capabilities. And where it begins with the Palisade is the vehicle knowing you're ready, and where it happens is just coming up to the vehicle, keeping the key in your pocket, and it pretty much knows you're there. That means it rises to the occasion, which was a perfect placement when it came to rain and my hands full, because after all, I don't want to do the dance motion detector. I'd rather let the vehicle know I'm here and rise to the occasion. Also rising is the overall height. I'm around about 6'2", and this easily clears me, which means this is not a head banging affair. Once it rises out of the way, what you're seeing is pretty decent cargo, around about 18 cubic feet as it sits. And this is important because oftentimes you got a full house in here, so you still got to have room to boot at the back end. But thankfully, with the various combinations with the split rear third seat, you can certainly have people and cargo invading that space. So as you go forward, around about 45 cubic feet when the third row is laid flat, and a whopping 86 cubic feet when everything is laid flat. With any sport utility vehicle, it's not rocket science when it comes to laying these flat, but it can be kind of a backbending affair and a multi-step option because headrests naturally can get in the way, especially when laying flat near that second row. But thankfully, on this Palisade, the Calligraphy Edition, everything is made so much simpler in the form of these buttons here on the outer side. First thing you'll see is basically the ability to raise these up or lay them flat, and that's in the form of this button down below. So just simply press that. It is an automated system, which means the headrest automatically flip forward as it gets down to a certain point, and it seamlessly lays flat. And you certainly can do it for the other side as well. And it's a nice ease of motion, so no one's going to get harmed, and everyone's certainly going to know to get out of the way. Once it lays flat, again, 45 cubic feet of space back here. Just in case you're back here and still need extra cargo room, well, you don't have to dance around this vehicle. It's all here again on the left side in the form of the left and right caption shares buttons. Just simply press either one and it lays flat. For the Palisade, you could say it's almost about backseat riding than it is being in pilot position, because the attention that the backseat drivers get is, well, on the next level. Where you see it first off is in the caption chairs, really wide, lazy boy like feel, even a pillow like effect when it comes to this headrest. As for conveniences, again, you don't want to make it problematic to get back there. The caption chairs give you 2 options. Certainly the center aisle, which is great, maybe for smaller children, but for a grown adult, well, you want to make it easy, and you'll find it in the form of this button here on the outer shoulder position. Just simply press it. It simply slides forward, making it an ease of ingress to the back. If you do have the opportunity to be a backseat driver in a Palisade, don't let it go to your head and refer to the driver as your chauffeur. Just still call him Dad. But after you see all the appointments back here, it won't be hard to get there. Where it all starts is here on the window, what I refer to as a limo shade. Everyone else calls it a sunshade. It just kind of takes the extra cool factor, basically meaning if you're too cool for school, pull this up and look a little bit more regal. Also, what's going to make you feel a little bit more regal is the appointments. First off, in the second row captain chairs, heated and cooled seats. And for the very back seat drivers, you at least still have heated seats as well. When it comes to legroom numbers, you're going to find 44 inches in the front, 42 inches in the second row, and around about 31 inches in the back. But what does that really look like in reality? So I figured my tall, lanky frame should at least give you a visual back there. Now again, to get there, just simply press that button. Going to slide in with these, and with the overall lower height here, basically what I'm going to do is kind of do a slight bend and crawl, putting my foot right here and easily finding my position. Now, once you slide this second row back, one thing to note is instead of making it vertical right away, find your comfort zone and then ease it back. That's going to allow you to be the determiner of really the legroom numbers back here, because 42 inches in the second row is quite substantial. That means these second rows can slide forward just a hair, creeping this number truly up to around about 33, maybe even 34 inches. But what you're going to notice with those numbers is this rear bench is fairly low, so it's hard to get strong numbers on paper, but it's easy to see there's strong numbers in person. Now first you got to raise this rear headrest, and once you get into position, what I love is the fact that there's cathedral-like feel. This certainly can be a head-banging affair, but with your overall positioning, you'll find that there's actually a cutaway right above where my head is, giving me plenty of acreage above this chrome dome. That means actually for a grown adult, this is quite comfortable. Once backseat drivers climb inside, you'll also notice the climate control system back here to really dial up your comfort, basically in the form of digital readout for your temperature, as well as fan speed and mode select options. Also, you need connectivity in the form of a typical household outlet down below and USB connections here on either side. When it comes to power on the hood, you're going to see a 3.8 liter V6 engine that delivers 291 horses and 262 foot-pounds of torque, coupled to an 8-speed automatic transmission with paddle shifters. Lastly is grip at the 4 corners, and thankfully this Calligraphy edition came with the H-Track all-wheel drive, making sure you got out of every slippery situation. For the Pilot, you could say it's all about the LCD displays, both for the gauge cluster, the infotainment entertainment system, and down below even for the climate controls. This being part of the tri-zone system, dual zones up front, nice digital readout for the temperature, and touch sensitive when it comes to airspeed. Just dial it across to what you specifically like. Down below, you'll find all the variations for the gear selection, as well as the all-wheel drive prowess. Between the front occupants, it looks nice and sleek. First off, with this covering here that hides the operation of the cup holders and wireless charging. But when you need to get there, just simply press that button and it reveals a nice spacious area. First off, dual cup holders, but you'll notice there's not really kind of anywhere to house them. That way, basically, you can create this as a storage area, or when you need it, just simply press the corresponding buttons. Now this area flips out, press the other one, flips out. Now you have dual cup holders. This area over here is for wireless charging, and they have upped the capabilities, which means it charges your phone a lot quicker. If you're familiar with other Hyundai models, nothing really changed here, just lots of operation behind the screen. Certainly they default with this, which means less distracting, but you do have shortcuts down below to get to your favorite view and just basically dial in exactly what you're looking for. Over on the gauge cluster, nice digital readout both for the tach and speedometer. And what you're going to find is great conveniences on the steering wheel, again with the paddle shifters, but kind of an autonomous-like feel when it comes to cruise control. Now, certainly you have to keep your hand on the steering wheel, but when you set it correctly, specifically with this lane awareness, that's going to give a little bit of input by the vehicle to kind of keep you centered on the lane. But if you tend to go hands-free, it's going to alert you and cut it off if you're not engaged. So really, I like this area because it can create this vehicle to have less driver fatigue. I mentioned earlier about the backup camera surround view on this vehicle, and certainly when you're in the right gear, it will illuminate, but in those spots where you need it to automatically come up, just simply press that button here and it will reveal. Now, what you see on the left side is obviously the backup camera, but what I really like about this is that typical bird's eye view, and this is really helpful parallel parking or getting to the tight spots, as it will show you, of course, the curbing and maybe those hash marks to make sure you're fully in your spot. You can go over and dial in other cameras like this one here. That's going to be helpful if this vehicle is actually equipped with trailering. You can actually see it getting closer to the trailer. This one's going to look down the side. This takes a little bit of getting used to, but obviously you're looking closely down each side. That also is going to coordinate those cameras with when you're using your turn signal. If you're turning right, that's going to look down the side of the vehicle. If you're turning left, coordinates over there to the side. So this vehicle really dialing in everything nicely. You certainly have plenty of acreage there between the front occupants. Just in case you don't, though, maybe want to keep items in the car all the time and out of the way, there is a lower portion there underneath the gear selector. It does have connectivity in the form of a typical car outlet and USB. That does it for this edition of Road Warrior, and a test drive behind the wheel of the 2023 Hyundai Palisade Calligraphy Edition model that delivered, of course, that exterior pizzazz, the dual tones, this deep burgundy kind of exterior, and certainly that grille warfare that turns heads. But no one's going to worry too much about what other people think on the outside, because you'll be too busy being spoiled on the inside, certainly in the driver's seat, but pretty much from here back, there's not a bad seat in the house. Now, as always, thank you for watching this edition of Road Warrior. Keep both hands on the wheel and eyes straight ahead.